Welcome to this day. It's the Tuesday after the Easter holidays. I hope you had a good time in your Easter holidays as we celebrated the resurrection. And today we want to end a series that we've been running for a while on digital rights and digital, platforms and all the narrative around digital migration and, accommodation as a country. But most importantly, I don't want us to end this conversation without talking about the education sector and how, this digital migration has navigated through the education sector post-pandemic and even pre-pandemic. Because today we cannot anymore have class the way we used to have it. And to have this conversation, I have Julia Muhumuza from the Uganda National Students Association here with me. What better way to have a conversation with people that are recipients of these digital platforms? Welcome to the show, Julia.
Thank you.
Yeah, maybe to begin us off, I would want you to tell us a little bit of what your organization does.
It's an umbrella that represents all students post-primary in Uganda. It works immediately under the Ministry of Education. And yes, I think you've realized in schools we have student councils. So those are still part of the UNSA structures. Yeah, the guild councils, the guild presidents, they're all part of UNSA. All they do is now vote the National Executive Committee. Yes, so that is how we come into play, and it's mainly for advocacy and welfare of students.
All right. Do the decisions made by the UNSA affect the different student councils in different schools?
Yes, and sometimes we get to come into schools to see if we can negotiate policies or immediately know what the ministry is planning and how best we can put it down in
the schools.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the workers' union. how the workers' union helps workers and different employees. So that is how I understood it quickly. Today we want to talk about digital migration in schools and in the education sector, but most importantly on how the students have received it and are using them. I know for one, I've navigated around the alpha for the UCU, and it's a little bit interesting to see, especially because it's students that, birthed this technology that they're using at UCU. But maybe just to, piggyback on the things that you think are happening within the digital movement in schools, how have you navigated these? I'm imagining you've interfaced with some of the platforms we are using now for school.
Yeah, in fact, I should have started by saying I am a finalist, forthcoming graduate from Makerere University Business School. And I think by the time COVID came in, I was moving to my final year. And that is when we got to embrace the online learning. Obviously, at first, we didn't see it as an option, but because along the way we got frustrated, you moved on so soon.
So, I know, and they've graduated people while we were waiting.
Exactly. Yeah. So you would realize that the people I had to graduate with graduated a long time ago because government institutions took long to adopt. But along the way, I think they realized that we cannot wait any longer. So online learning and assessment became a must. We had
it was the only school we had.
The only school we had. So that is how we also got MOOCSEP. And I think I really understand why public institutions took long to adopt. Because for UC, it's a private institution.
Indeed.
And you realize that most of the people who even go to UCU, majority of them can afford laptops, everything, which is totally different from a public institution. Because I remember I would have online classes, using Zoom, and coming from a class that has over 400 students, the biggest class on Zoom we would ever have was 70.
And that was the biggest.
That was the biggest.
Of a class of 400.
Yes. So it only shows you really how people adopt to. So the movement has, I feel like students only opted to adopt. One, because they could afford. Two, because it was the only option. But three, because some actually wanted, but they didn't have the means to, because you realize that most people would come together, like 20 students,
to study,
to use one phone or one laptop to study. Yeah, so it's just the infrastructure and also institutions, like school fees were still high, in fact, higher
than before, indeed.
than before. And then also on the side of lecturers, even if you log into classes, you know, even in urban centers, that you realize there are places that have poor networks. So you log in and sound.
My home doesn't have network.
So you see, so it becomes challenging. But you know, on the other side of learning, it's okay. You can tolerate, read around, but it gets so frustrating in when it gets to e-assessment. We have been there, and honestly, high failure rates. Many people have retakes, but it's not because they didn't work hard, but because the system failed them. Maybe your network closes you out,
and that's that.
And that's that.
And I love that you actually bring that conversation, because I remember talking to a person who was doing an e-paper. They were going to do the exam, and then they give it to you 2 days earlier on. But then the conversation that we're having is there are very many people who submit, and then I think the system dies out or loses their paper. And so you have to, so these kind of intricacies, that hard not things, how are students navigating them, especially in assessment, in graduating. Is the time still the same, the time frame for graduating, while we are using e-assessments?
No, we are graduating in May. We usually had to graduate in January, would give time. But our results were just released a week or two ago, and by May, like already clearance would have been done. So there is no room to hear out some of these people. The honest truth, I feel like the country left out the education sector. In terms of coping with what came with COVID.
Indeed.
They just threw it to the schools. You have to
figure it out.
Yeah, figure it out. And that is why you realize schools did not invest much in building their systems.
Yes.
Because schools cannot explain losing your script that you uploaded. You log in, there is no record of you actually ever uploading.
But you did upload.
So all these issues, like schools sometimes just sit on them and end up not even helping people. And usually the best way to help someone is maybe giving them a redo. But you know, also quality assurance, you just don't give someone a redo.
Indeed.
Yeah, so you realize that even the scripts that were uploaded, the ones the system got, to print out, because they have to print out and mark. So they may choose to actually print out like 10 out of the 50 pages. So you realize that even the results that come back, most students are really not, like, I don't expect this.
I know what you're saying. I think for the last semester, there was a strike to stop online assessment at Makerere University. And I'm saddened because we've come from 2 years. I think Uganda had the longest lockdown on schools alone. But we've come out of 2 years, and I was imagining that we would have, you know, every other time assessments to help, you know, students pick up or even make up for the grades that they missed along the way as we're using the digital platforms. But I think my concern now that I don't know if the students can push for, is to have with centers within the university. I don't know if they have them. I know Makerere has an e-library part of it, but is it possible to push or to even lobby for digital infrastructure within universities that students can use on a daily basis, that is working, that is up to date, so that we reduce on the number of accessibility for those that can't. But even if we are going to assess students, we can use the ones for the universities. Is it something that your UNSA or even the students' organizations at universities can push for?
It's a very good idea, but I feel like it does not start from schools. It starts from the National Council of Education, ministry, because in private schools it's possible, it's very possible, but in public, you know, the bureaucracy with doing things, you'll find that we even have e-learning centers in most of these public institutions, but they can't do as much as they would want to do because of their resources. We pay school fees and it goes direct to the government.
Indeed.
Yes.
Indeed, yeah.
So some of these policies actually have to come from above. And you know, that's why we feel so frustrated seeing that the government is really not prioritizing education. And you see the whole strike from students is because we are frustrated. We are paying a lot of money. We are not getting value for that money. We are not using the school resources, and even the services are not improving. But again, I want to say the government should have appreciated that COVID opened us up to digital or e-learning. And we do not go back, like completely banning digital or shutting it out.
Even physical school is still something that we can still, I think we need a blend.
Blended, yeah. And I want to appreciate certain schools because they still do blended. And I feel like the beauty in still trying to adopt digital, it keeps showing you the loopholes, not like with BOOPs. They were able to identify from the very first set of exams we did online, they were able to identify what went wrong, how can we improve. So we were like experiments, which is okay. So
a good experiment.
Good experiment. So the more we appreciate e-learning and the more schools are open and the government is willing to make it better, build digital infrastructures. Because I remember there are times when MTN and Airtel were starting to partner with these institutions so that you would log into the school website without using data.
That would be nice.
That would be nice, but with there is just not that connection between what schools are trying to do and what the government is up to. So you may find that very good policies or very good things that would help students and schools just stop along the way. And for us students, as long as we do not see value for money, as long as school fees are still high, we don't see why we should study online. And that is where the MOOC strike comes in.
And maybe also one thing I noted is not even just the MOOC strike, also the usability of these platforms. I did computer studies when I was in secondary, but it was an option. And then I come to university and I do it as a course unit. It wasn't really that you were doing a lot. I mean, you just needed to open an email as coursework. That was a coursework, set up an email address for yourself. But navigating these digital spaces is going to require that people have hands-on skills. And computer studies stays an option, even in our systems. But the narrative that is happening today is that the future is going to be fully digitalized. And, every other thing is going to be at the touch of your tablet or your phone. I'm curious to know if there are students who actually didn't use these platforms because they didn't know how to.
Yeah. I want to say I was guilty. I later adopted. You know how like you are computer illiterate. On top of that, you just do not know how everything works.
Yes.
And you realize when you were trying to adopt, it was also done through Zoom.
Yes.
So very many people were actually closed out because, okay, even if you're getting a smartphone for the first time to use it for classes, I mean, what exactly are you going to use it? And you realize that's the same reason we had very high cases of bullying. Some people would attend classes, they don't know they've left their video on, and maybe they're not dressed or what is happening. And it's all like bent on the side of like there was less education as far as adopting is concerned. I want to appreciate some schools, like I've seen certain high schools trying to make it compulsory for computer classes, even if you're doing arts. You still learn, even if you're not going to do it for USCE, you still learn how to use a computer.
It's very important.
It's very important.
Because I walked in, and I think maybe because I was a few of the proactive ones, during, we had the time of cafes. I don't know if they're still there. They ought to be there, internet cafes. And as much as I went to log into social apps, I also went to teach myself how to touch type, how to do all these things. These are skills children elsewhere learn when they're young, and we have to navigate. And then you come into university and then boom, you're thrown into a space where you actually need to start to learn how to use these things. And there are even people who left campus when they've never used them. You go get someone to do your coursework and then you return it. Maybe also then we can look into affordability, because I worried. I myself, I struggle when it comes to buying data and keeping up on and using my phone on a constant. And I'm imagining here is a student that has to buy data to be able to study or even to upload a paper. How was this experience on maybe also on a personal level, because I'm imagining we're in a pandemic. So most probably your parents are not giving you the pocket money that you deserve,
Yeah.
or even not giving you at all, but you have to be online. How are you navigating the issues to deal with data?
Personally, I chose classes that I wouldn't miss. I didn't attend every class because Zoom is expensive. That's the
Very.
fact. And having like 4-hour classes every day. And you know, it also came at a time where internet was taxed, which made
Yes.
data more expensive.
Yes, yes.
So what I did, or what I saw most of my friends do, is you would look through your course units and see which one really you
The
can't afford to.
non-negotiables.
Exactly. So you would attend that one. The one for theory, you would know how you would read, or maybe get someone discuss.
Yeah.
But what majority of people did was what I mentioned earlier, like you meet like 20 people.
And sit for a class.
Yeah, and attend class together. Or like one person attends and then you get to discuss if you ever meet again. It was really so expensive. Very, very expensive. And I remember that's the time we tried to raise our voices online to ask the government or whoever is in charge to recall the tax at least, or even waive data for students, because it was so pressing and so much.
And I think that is a conversation that needs to constantly happen, not even just to waive the tax, but to make it easy and accessible for students. Let's have packages, even with these private entities. I know MTN and Airtel are private, but these private entities equally need to be able, to have packages for students, because we're not returning. That's for a fact.
Yeah.
We've migrated, we've moved. And the earlier we come to a place where we, make it easy, learning to happen for every other person. And with that also came the divide. I don't know if there are students, and you would tell me this, if there are students in the rural areas that you've been previewed to who just gave up on school.
Yeah.
Because it's digital, we don't have access to a mobile device or even any other device that connects to the internet, and that's just that.
And I think when you have a chance to attend or go to a public institution, you just know that there are two extremes. There are some of the people who go to Makere because it's Makere, but they can afford, right? And people who go to Makere because maybe they went there on government sponsorship or
quota system.
Like they really have some kind of help, but with them they don't have the money for data. They don't have the smartphones.
They just have the tuition that is given by the government.
Yeah, they just have the tuition. So it was evident COVID, especially online learning, drew the line. Majority gave up. Even those that tried to hold on, like they don't attend class, they meet you and you discuss for them. When e-assessment came in,
that's that.
Yeah, they really gave up. I saw in my own class, I think we may graduate like 200. That's like half the class,
that's
or even
half
less.
The class, or even less.
Yeah, but majority dropped out, not because they really wanted to drop out, but they just could not adopt. Not because they didn't want to adopt, they did not have the resources to adopt. Even network itself, you realize that some people are in parts of Uganda that do not
have access to it.
Yes, no access. Some would even come back online. Because I remember what stopped us from moving on is by the time COVID hit, we were waiting for final exams. That means if we had to move on, we had to first do e-assessment.
And get starting.
So now e-assessment comes in. There are people in different parts of the world that are not even online. They later come back
to school. And COVID found everyone everywhere.
Yes. So there are also cases of us reporting back to school for blended, and people are just starting to realize, oh my God, these guys did exams.
And I don't have that
they
exam.
Have no
and
idea.
I have to graduate. How do I begin navigating that?
Yeah, so some will just apply for a dead year, and all these things really just kept on happening. We just got used to these cases. It was really a sad time, but I think schools, especially public schools, took a stand that we are now moving with whoever can move.
Let's go.
Let's go.
We'll find you. And yet we are trying to, and I think this is my challenge, is because we are speaking on sustainable development and the tagline of leaving no one behind, we constantly need to question ourselves on what are we then doing to make life better for everyone. Because those students then have to they were left behind. They now have to, make up for that time, that's money wasted, that's time wasted. And I'm imagining also on an emotional or mental part of it. I mean, I studied with these people, then I'm graduating late. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up.
It
I would
doesn't.
rather give up in the goal. And maybe as we wind up this conversation, do you reimagine a scenario where we can leverage these digital platforms for better? I'll give you a scenario. When Zoom had just begun, because children, I don't know if they know, I know they know, children know the things that they do, but then there was a particular child in a school, and it was primary, that's the unfortunate bit, who kept using vulgar language during the online lessons. And so they would put them in the waiting room, but it kept happening. And so the scare is this kind of violence, and this is just a child, but even in the adults, the students, the university students, the violence that comes with using these platforms, even for learning, the bullying that you were talking about. What strategies can we, navigate and have to hold these people accountable, even in the online spaces?
I feel like because the schools have adopted, it's not something they ever prepared for themselves. They equally never have a policy on how to
The
use
rules
the
to
rules
navigate,
on how
yes.
to use media or how to use Zoom or
Yeah,
online
yeah, yeah.
classes. They just have to really look into it. Even the national, like the above, has
Yes,
nothing really to do
yes.
with Zoom and respect and bullying. I feel that, you see, putting that aside, it's the same reason we still have like other social media platforms having high rates of bullying,
Indeed, indeed.
using vulgar language. You say something on
Sexual
Twitter,
harassment, sexual
you wake
violence,
up tomorrow and you're
yes,
trending in a very bad
in a
way.
very bad way.
Yeah, so I really feel like one, schools themselves have to try and see if they can come up with measures. I've attended Zoom sessions where it's only the restricted parties that can talk, and you
Yes,
just
you just
learn,
listen
you
in.
just
Yeah,
listen in. And I remember when we had just started using Zoom, like you log in, either people just didn't know how to
we
mute,
didn't know.
but the lecturer is teaching, someone is washing utensils, someone is screaming, and it would take like 30 minutes, and
To get
everyone
the class in order.
mute, please mute, please mute. Yeah, but there's also that other section. The only problem with that is it does not allow those with questions to finally ask.
Yes.
But I feel like that would be an option for starters, as everything is being put to order, and also maybe use of school emails. I've seen MOOCs do that, like they register all of us, they
On the
give us
emails.
yeah, so like they send you details in case you need to ask back, you know who to ask, and
Yeah.
immediate response. Even like lecturers, like, okay, I just feel like there just need to be policies around use of
Yeah,
Zoom,
yeah,
online
yeah.
classes, e-assessment, because even e-assessment, it does not, I don't feel like it meets the
The
standards of
standard,
exams.
yes.
We have very many cases of people cheating. You've seen very many cases of people doing papers together. And this is not what the country would want, especially for its education,
Even the people they're channeling out, because then we question, did you really attain this
Everyone
degree?
else like
Yeah.
questions, right? And right now, schools or the country is still in a dilemma, or it's trying to jungle many things and try to see how we adopt, how to rectify this. So as they really plan to work around all that, it goes back to how best they can include
Yeah,
policies that
yeah,
guarantee
yeah,
safety.
yeah.
Sometimes our safety goes beyond to just passwords, but much bent to bullying, because I've
True,
seen that
true.
in all my online classes. So and some people even log in using thing like, I don't know, accounts that you can't trace.
You can't
So
trace,
even if a
yes.
student insults you,
Siphoned
like you
accounts,
you
you don't know how
don't.
to trace it back.
Yeah, and we've also seen Zoom sessions being hacked.
Yeah.
Yeah, so all the schools need to actually have more.
Digital
Yeah,
safety.
digital safety.
I hear you, and maybe because and I come from a place where it's all new. It's all new to us. Even while other countries had it, it's all new to us. And for 2 years, I was imagining for 2 years we would have, a strategic plan on how we navigate post-pandemic if schools open. But the fact that there are still strikes, And the fact that we still have, issues with e-assessment says a lot on where we are going, what the way forward is. As the Uganda National Students Association, like what key elements of pushback can you foster, especially for digital safety, digital migration, and for the betterment of the students? As an association, what is it that you can add to this conversation that we can rally with, even us as people, even as civil society, even as student associations, that we can, push you to be able to have, better internet access, better digital platforms, better online regulation and streamlining? What is it you would want?
I think it's more to do with collective effort. Yeah. I feel like a student has a role to play.
Yeah.
Association, all leaders,
Lecturers.
even parents, lecturers. And for us to really carry this on, one, we need to keep emphasizing that there is need for us not to move back, because I've seen certain institutions clearly closing it out and moving on like it never happened. We just need to appreciate that we need it, but be open to making it better. But we also need to use a collective voice to the government, because we need digital infrastructures. Schools need to really be supported. They need to be like empowered. Indeed. Because we keep saying we need this, we keep saying schools should, but there are certain schools that really won't jump or refuse to adopt to e-assessment.
How have they been navigating it?
They finally adopted when everything almost came back to normal. But for the 2 years, Jambogo refused.
They sat back.
The vice chancellor refused. He said he knows his students. And at some point, I was so biased. But again, when I thought about it,
when you think about it,
he was coming from an informed opinion, right? So we need to empower institutions and students as well. I saw Kenya giving out over 20,000 laptops, phones.
And that is nice.
That is really nice. And our government, I don't even know if we had any policy. Parliament went silent. It's like education was never a priority.
It was never a priority.
Yeah, so we need to learn from all the challenges we've had. We need to push for moving on, like keep migrating. We don't turn back. Yes, and we make our structures better. There is a time we had MyUG Wi-Fi along Nakawa, right? Government also recalled that back, and that was a very good.
That's a very good
thing,
start.
because around Nakawa we have very many institutions, even institutes that had students use this Wi-Fi, right? But it was also recalled. But on top of us requesting the government, we need to also seek out to or reach out to Airtel, MTN. They have a role to play.
Remove the 100 shillings.
They really have a role to play, as much as partnering and making data easier for students.
Thank you very much, Julia. We can keep having this conversation because it's timely and it's with us, and these are the issues that we are going to be dealing with for the next few years. Please, when you sit back and think about, the students that are in school, think about the fact that they're in a blend and they're trying to navigate these spaces. But most importantly, think about what you can do as we push for the digital migration. We are not going back. We are going into the fourth revolution, industrial revolution, and that includes AI, the Internet of Things, and also school will be redefined again as we know it. So let's keep moving. Like Julia said, we cannot go back. Thank you for joining us for this conversation. I have been your host, Tricia Gloria Nabaye. Please tune in, subscribe, like, comment, and continue these conversations. Thank you.